Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Alliance of Independent Authors Advanced Self-Publishing Salon. You think I get it right by now after like years. With me, Joanna, Penn, and Orna Ross. Hi, Orna.
Hi, Joanna. Yes, don't forget the advanced. Very important.
I always forget. I mean, seriously, some days we don't feel so advanced. But today we are talking about the Nimble advantage, indie authors in an era of accelerating change. And that I get quite excited about all of this type of stuff. But we are going to talk about some of the mindset things that we need to have in place, as well as giving you a glimpse of some of the next decade and also some practical tips. But before we do that, as ever, we are authors first. So Orna, give us the Ally news and updates.
Yes, so lots of things happening on the big partner member front. So we've been running a sort of summer here in Britain, allegedly. Somebody said it was. And so we ran a summer webinar series. So we've had a few seminars with Apple Books. We had our Australian one last week and European. And now we have another one on the 12th. And this week on the 8th, we have KDP about getting more sales on the KDP platform. So that's all good. And the other big sort of news for Ally members at the moment is that there has been a change to the Ingram discount code. Now that's very popular. We have lots of discounts and deals for our author members provided by our partner members. One of the most popular is definitely the Ingram Spark code, because it allows for free updates, upload of your book, but also free revisions, which is really generous of them. And of course, they also sponsor this podcast, I should mention. So yeah, the change is that we have to now change the Ally code every month because, we just have to. So before uploading your book to Ingram Spark, if you're using the Ally code, you're going to have to log into the member zone and navigate to partner services, approved services it's called, and then under approved services you will find the discounts and deals page, and you get the code there. Each month it will change, and each month it will allow you 5 uses. So that's 5, including upload or revision. And if you've got more than 5 to do this month, you'll just have to wait till next month. But lots of questions about that because it had to come down pretty suddenly last week, but it's back in place now.
Yeah, fantastic. So yes, log in and get the code. And yes, we should say, just emphasizing that they sponsor this podcast, they sponsor my podcast, and that is because we use them and love Ingram Spark. And I think that's really important to say. In fact, behind me are many Ingram Spark books. So yes, in terms of what I'm up to, I am in the first draft phase of 2 books, which I hardly ever do 2 at the same time. But this is a novel now called Tomb of Relics, which is my Arcane book 12. I had to change the title, although working titles often change. So if I mentioned last month, I think it was called Day of the Martyr, and now it's not. That's just life when you're a discovery writer.
Everybody remembered that.
Very good point. Nobody actually cares anyway.
Well, until the end, until it's a real thing. As you say, it changes lots. Yeah. So
yeah, I think that, and I think it's good for me to say that, because some people think that somehow titles are set in stone. Of course, they're not, even after publication. I'm also co-writing The Relaxed Author with Mark Leslie Lefebvre, an idea we came up with on a podcast episode and we decided to write it. So that's happening. And I think, although I've known Mark for over a decade, I think he's discovering that I'm not quite so relaxed about co-writing. So that's going to be quite funny. And I also just wanted to mention that I did do my book sales breakdown based on revenue, not volume. Yes, so I didn't do one last year. So this is the first one for 2 years. And I wanted to share, thanks to Ingram Spark, who are now 6% of my revenue, Kobo is also 6%, but very excitingly, direct sales also 6% of my revenue. So that is selling ebooks and audiobooks from my websites, and that was less than 1% 2 years ago. And also two other interesting things. Audiobook share is now 21% of my revenue, and which is pretty. So that's almost a quarter of my revenues from audio, and that I sold ebooks in 126 countries last year. And that's also very cool, because that was people say, oh, I can't do that now, but remember, I started out in 2008 and it was about 2 countries back then. So it's all a matter of growth. But I wanted to those will link in the show notes, but there's breakdown by format, by author name, by country, by platform, by fiction, non-fiction, and all of that. So hopefully people will find that useful.
It's fantastic, yeah. It's so interesting to hear how it develops over the years. So brilliant. That's your Kobo map that tells you where you sold, is it? Or are you taking also Ingram Spark and other providers into account, or is that just Kobo?
No, I do take other providers into account, but the Kobo one is still the best map, in my opinion.
Oh, I love the Kobo map. It's just fantastic. Yeah, you always find you sold something in, Papua New Guinea or somewhere else, and you think, I have a reader there. I can't believe it. It's fantastic. Yeah.
And what about you, Orna?
Yeah, so I am writing away. I think last time I was talking about submitting for some awards and things. So I'm preparing, really, I suppose you would say, to do more licensing. Because partly out of investigation, wanting to investigate, but also because I think licensing is becoming, and we'll talk a little bit about this as we get into talking about the changes that are happening and coming, happening already and coming. That licensing is becoming more and more important. So yeah, submitted for some awards and got a couple of indie awards, which is very nice. And yay! And I've also started working with an agent again, which means pitching again, and her making suggestions that I should do things like submit to magazines and things that I really don't want to do. And then I think, well, do I have to? And it's really interesting. It's very challenging, and it's very interesting to revisit it all a decade later and decide, well, sometimes, I started self-publishing because I fully really think it was an emotional, intuitive kind of thing. I just thought, yeah, this is definitely huge and I want to be part of it. But it's interesting now, 10 years later, what bits, what was it in me that I didn't want to do in the trade side. And so finding that out, I'm kind of revisiting everything and seeing what I do and I don't want to do. So that's been me this month. So I just need to get something out. So
just one other thing. I just hopefully we can edit this out of the recording, but this looks like the maximizing your sales on KDP link. Are we on the wrong link?
Oh heavens, yes. We are. We are. Yes.
Does that matter? What do we do? Because I was just thinking, there's no one here, and it's because anyone else is on the other link. Sorry, right. Howard. Edit this out.
They're expecting it for next time. Okay.
I think just carry on.
I think so. As we're already on this link, we'll create a new one for KDP.
For KDP, and anyone expecting us live won't get it, I suppose.
My mistake.
Oh, no, here we go.
And that explains why people keep coming in and I'm kicking them out. That's what I got distracted doing there. Yeah, we're on the wrong link. Okay, fine.
Okay. So we'll just carry on here and
people can still see us. We're still going out on Facebook and YouTube and so on. So
it's just the wrong topic.
Just the wrong topic. And
can you put a comment on or anything on?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry if you are live watching us live. I just noticed that the title's wrong and we're not talking about maximizing your sales.
Okay, thank you for noticing. I will edit it now, actually, which is something I can do, I think. Can I? No, I can't. Can't be changed once we've edited. Okay, let's stop talking about it. Let's just keep on going.
Just
to know what the topic is. So, do you want to reiterate that? And I will...
can you add a comment there?
I'm adding a comment, yes.
That is hilarious. I said I shall say, because we're moving into the topic now. The topic of today is the nimble advantage, indie authors in an era of accelerating change. So we are going to talk about the mindset of surfing the change and not drowning in it. Then we're going to give you some points on some of the things that are changing. And if you follow my podcast, I've talked about some of these things, but we're going to get into some of the other stuff. And then we'll talk about some of the tips about staying nimble so that you can take advantage of what's going to happen over the next decade. So sorry, everyone. We're just going to pretend this didn't happen for the audio recording.
Yeah.
So, right. Well, Orna, anything else, or should we just get straight into it?
Oh, let's go to the topic. Yes.
Okay. So, basically, the main thing is that things will always change. That is the only certainty. And as I mentioned, I've been doing this since 2008. And if you compare what we had, what's so funny is indie authors are like, I heard someone moaning the other day about why pre-orders are a certain way and not the other. And it made me laugh, because I remember for years wanting pre-orders and we weren't allowed them. And now we've got pre-orders for ebook and for print book through Ingram Spark. And that is pretty exciting. And we've got so many things that we didn't have. And in fact, right now, the business model for an indie author is pretty much the same as for a traditional publisher. We can pretty much reach all those markets. Yes, it takes some work, but really we can do pretty much everything, and many indie authors are. So that's the first thing, is that things will always change, and we need to embrace the change and live with it rather than fearing it and moving away from it. So Orna, I wonder if you're very much in touch with the indie authors in Ally. Why is fear such an issue when we talk about things changing? And what can people do about it, I guess?
I think it's, indie authors are fearful of change because human beings are fearful of change. I mean, science has shown us that there is a biological underpinning for this. And then socially, we are conditioned to try to stay safe and secure and, keep things as they are. It's just a natural tendency. And the response that kind of rises up in us physiologically is a fear response. And we may not always recognize it as that, though, because our minds are very clever at coming in and presenting it to us as logic or as, for a different emotion. Perhaps it could be disdain for, marketing, for example, or it may not present as fear. Fear doesn't always present as fear. But the most important thing, I mean, the whole point of being a creative is that you feel fear and you do it anyway. That is what distinguishes creative people from people who opt for more conventional ways of living. And so as we are in the creative, everybody in the creative industries is now being challenged by technological advances that are happening at lightning speed. And as we were discussing before the show, they're leapfrogging over each other. It's impossible to say what's coming next. We've been talking about some of these changes for a long time, but we're constantly taken, even you, and you really keep in touch with stuff, constantly surprised by what's surfacing. So I think the response is 100% natural. I think that's the most important thing to say, but it's not something to give into. Because you will, such is the pace of change, and so much of that change is positive change, that if you don't embrace it, then you're actually going to find it difficult to maintain an author business and even to keep up with authors who do embrace it. So I guess that's what tonight's show is about. It's about saying we actually have the advantage that allows us to respond in a very nimble way, which bigger corporations and businesses don't have. And so again, we led the technological changes over the last decade. Trade publishing is only now beginning to do things and talk about even doing things that we've been doing for a decade, and that will continue, and that's something to be proud of, I guess.
Yeah. And I think this is so important to talk about now, that this fear aspect, because I feel like we're in a really weird period of the pandemic. Now, this time last year, we were in terrible fear. And I know some people still are for health reasons, but we're in a much better situation than we were a year ago in terms of what's going on with the pandemic. But fear is something we have all felt in some way in the last year, 18 months. And I think that's part of it. I feel like there's been a lot, and as we come out and we start trying to get into the world again, there are so many levels of dealing with fear that makes a difference. And yeah, I mean, your tolerance level, like today I was saying to Orna, they were resurfacing the road outside our house, and I got very, very angry. And anger is one of those things that happens when you're stressed. Like, I'm not an angry person, but when I get that angry, it's because I'm stressed and I can't cope. So what I guess what we're saying about fear as well, and what Orna mentioned there, is it might manifest in other ways. So for example, I've been talking about AI writing. I introduced Orna to pseudo write, SU. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute. But I've had a lot of people email me and say, why are you talking about this? This is going to ruin writing, and this is, this could destroy us all, and all these things. And yes, of course, there are problems, and there are always going to be problems in every sphere. But it's like, okay, so I understand fear of technology, but what are we going to do about it? Because we can't just make it go away. So maybe there's a way to take some action that will help you. And for me, the action is generally learn more about it, read more books. I have about 50 books on blockchain and AI and all these things that I feel are happening, because if I understand it, then I will feel less afraid. And this is why I did a demo for Orna on pseudo write and then the AI writing thing, because I thought if Orna could see it, then maybe other people might. So just tell us about that, because you were a bit kind of doubtful.
Yes, I mean, even the words artificial intelligence make me scared. Not now, but they did. And again, that is an ignorance kind of thing, because also we were fed all those scary movies and, all of that. So then I realized, and I think I would have had a kind of a sense that, getting a machine to do the writing for you, that's just not on. That's not writing. That's crazy. And of course, it isn't like that at all. It's just another tool, and that's what you kind of realize when you get stuck in and you go there and you work with it rather than allowing your assumptions to dictate what happens. Helps when you have friends who hold your hand along the way. But I have found that experience to be just fantastic. I'm really, really enjoying it. And I think that's the thing. I guess, I can see that not every writer would, and it's not going to be for every writer, this particular tool that I'm using, but it really, really suits me. And I think that's the thing. Back at the beginning of self-publishing, I remember, people have very, very strong opinions one way and the other. I was hearing two completely different stories from my author friends, and I realized the only way to know for me was to actually try it. And I absolutely loved it. And it's the same with all of these tools, I think, and all of this change. You have to, something that appeals, you got to go there and give it a try. You're not going to know by talking about it, so it is very much about kind of throwing yourself in and bringing a sort of a growth mindset to it. So I love that book by Carol Dweck, which is about growth mindset, what it takes to actually grow, evolve, and move with change, rather opposing that to a fixed mindset, which presumes it knows the outcome. And, it's being seen by psychology, building on her work, as more and more and more essential in today's rapidly changing work and home environments. Everything is changing rapidly. So without a growth mindset, you tend to suffer. And so, if you haven't read that book, I would really recommend it. And we will put a link to a nice infographic about it if you're not familiar with it in the show notes.
So I guess what we're saying about the mindset is really, if you feel fear or something that might be fear manifesting in a different way, like anger or frustration or any of these emotions, then just take a minute to examine it and decide whether you could address that by learning something or taking some action or finding a trusted voice to listen to. And it doesn't have to be us. You can go find other trusted voices. And because sometimes having people who are a little bit ahead of you in the pack can really help, but you do have to choose the right direction to follow, because that is also a problem in the indie community, because people end up following things that don't actually suit them very well. So you have to make a decision, but that's why we want to kind of talk about the mindset up front. So should we get into some of the changes?
Yeah, just one last thing before we go there. I remember you saying about when you're fearful about financial decisions, for example, and when you got into KDP, you invested in Amazon. It was a security thing, and when we take risks and when we're negotiating change, it's really important to do it from a place of safety. And so to build up security in other arenas, if you are stepping into change in one place, not to kind of throw everything into the wind, to actually secure your creative conditions, make sure there's good self-care there, and all of that will make negotiating it much, much easier. So let's talk about the changes.
Yes. So let's, just to reiterate the grounding. So again, today when I was angry and I went for a walk. So some of the things we're talking about, if you do feel that fear or resistance or like whatever, then as Orna said, that grounding, that self-care, the things that don't change. And this is really important. We are going to come to the tips at the end. And of course, the tips that we often give are the things that don't change. But Orna, do you want to take the first one? On the opportunities.
Looking specifically at the changes. So the first thing to say is that change, again, there's a negativity bias in us all. It's a natural, it's a given, and to be aware of that, and to be aware of the fact that change is equally positive as negative, at least, if not more so. So one of the great things about the changes that are happening is that every year, every few months, we've got more opportunities to create and reach readers. Kindle Vela is something that's just come on. There are new audio platforms, social. Everybody's talking about Clubhouse. I haven't gone there myself, but audio platforms is a whole new thing. We saw during this month, just gone, Ally Partner member Lawrence O'Brien and Bookstore Social just sold an ebook for $100 as an NFT, a non-fungible token, which is I'm not going to get into explaining what all these things are, but essentially a way to sell a premium and special digital product, which we didn't have available to us before. There's Spotify, there are all the other platforms that are getting into subscription stuff. So there are lots and lots of opportunities for the author who has held on to their rights, hasn't gone exclusive with any trade publisher or a self-publishing service, but is going wide. It's not a matter of it's kind of, what will I do? Which will I select to do? Because there are now so many different opportunities, and I remember a time when there were no opportunities. So that's just really, I think, the most important aspect of it.
Yeah, and that would be a tip already, which is you cannot do everything. You have to focus down. Also, you don't have to jump now. We're talking about some of the things that are shifting over the next, 2, 3, 5, 10 years. So, for example, Kindle Vela and the other serial fiction, Wattpad's been around for more than a decade, but it was only last year that they were bought by the massive South Korean company that owns Webtoon and other ones, and they have TV studios now. They have all these things, and Kindle Vela, like many of us think Kindle Vela was launched because suddenly serial fiction is really happening. And so, but personally, I don't read serial fiction and I don't write it, so I am not going anywhere near Vela or any of the other platforms like that. But I am interested in audio platforms, audiobooks, and also NFTs. And again, we're not going to go into detail on any of these things. We're just giving you like a strategic overview, and there'll be links and things in the notes. So one of the other things that I find fascinating is I've sat on a number of sessions at various things, including London Book Fair online over the last few weeks. And we are entering a more competitive, specifically book market. So, of course, we've got all these other things that are new, which traditional publishing won't be catching up to yet. But specifically, ebooks, digital audio, print on demand, it's like traditional publishing just discovered this, as you mentioned. And in fact, I sat on one session where one publisher was hailed as revolutionary by uploading an ebook and publishing globally at once. And I was like, really? Like, we've been doing this for a long time. Why is this revolutionary? But what this means, also what happened last year in the pandemic, is that 67% of publishing revenue in the US, according to the various surveys, was from the backlist, which was a reversal from previous years. So what's happened is the traditional publishers have gone, oh, backlist, digital, metadata, online sales, online marketing. So plus amalgamation coming in traditional publishing. So Random House and Simon & Schuster, with all the other small ones happening. So essentially, I think what we're going to see is traditional publishing taking some of our things like easy ad revenue, or things we have been seeing, but the prices will go up. We'll also see a number of I think traditional publishers will make bids for backlists of big authors, because I think they now understand that having a massive backlist of IP is actually going to make a difference. So I think that's going to change. What do you think about this one?
Yes, I do. And I think the mindset has changed. So, traditional publishing was always organized around the launch and the next book, and, that 8-week window to make a book, make or break a book. And as you say, they woke up, I think, to audiobooks first of all, and began to digitize the audio, and then began to understand that an ebook is not just an alternative print book, but is actually something that has a full life of its own. And that this idea of frontlist and backlist means nothing to readers. The day they discover the book is the day that they discover the book, and they don't care necessarily if it's evergreen. They don't care if it's, we're all still reading classics that were written 200, 300 years ago. So they don't care when the book was published 5 years ago, if it's a timeless tale. So much of what happens in publishing is convention and has built up around selling books into bookstores, and everything else kind of tagged on to that. Whereas now I think that people who kind of see where the money is are thinking very differently. Another thing we're seeing happening is organizations and universities and people like to say The Economist magazine, or people who have just loads and loads of great content are realizing, oh, I can actually put this up for sale through Amazon and monetize it in a big way. So Mike Shaskin, and there's a link in the show notes, has written very interestingly about what he calls enterprise publishing, and that's again a competition for the little author publisher who is offering something different and offering something unique. I think no matter what happens with big organizations, corporate publishers, or these big organizations, it's a type of publishing. But there are things that authors can do that nobody else can do, and I think that's what we need to be hyper aware of, and that's where our strength lies, and so we should play to our strengths here rather than trying to compete.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so another big thing, and in fact, this has started happening today, which is structural changes, I've called this. A couple of things. So one, Jeff Bezos has stepped down as the CEO of Amazon after 27 years. And in fact, Jeff himself has said that Amazon will be disrupted and most business models only last 25 years. And of course, Amazon started in 1994 with the sale of books online. So I think this is fascinating. I also feel Andy Jassy, who's taken over, has basically grown AWS, Amazon Web Services, into the behemoth that it is. It runs a lot of the internet. This is Amazon's cloud service. Now, and on top of this, we've also got the 5 bills going through the US Senate about breaking up big tech. We've got the Digital Markets Bill, or whatever it's called, Digital Services Act and Digital Markets Act, going through the EU. So what we've got is regulation. I don't think it will be breaking up big tech, but it's regulation of big tech. Now, this is coming. It doesn't matter which side of the political spectrum you are on. This is happening. And they're like, okay, we need to sort this out. So from the one thing, that means that we're going to see some disruption in these companies. They might divest some things. If you can't own the store and play in the store, what does that mean? But certainly something's going to happen, but they will talk about it for probably a couple of years. So it's not going to happen like next week. But I do think that even though people are saying, oh, Jeff moving on that won't make any difference, that's just crazy, because a new CEO and the end of essentially an era, there are going to be some changes. The other briefly mentioned structural change is digital money. Again, this is a 2-year, 3-year thing, which is obviously people have heard of cryptocurrency, things like Bitcoin, but this is digital crypto currencies that we already use. So China's launched the digital yuan or the renminbi, and the UK is looking at the Britcoin. I so hope it's called Britcoin. The US is looking at, digital dollar. So I think what we're going to see are different changes in the payment system and changes in the platforms that run these systems. I know this is a very simplified version of a lot of stuff that's going on, but Orna, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think this has great potential for indie authors if we can get it right, for all creatives, but it's still very much in development. And, will it just end up being the author at the end of the payment chain again, or can we actually use digital money and blockchain? Blockchain is just so interesting because of the way it just does away with middle people all over the place, and it's just technology does the things that lawyers were needed for and accountants were needed for, and so can we get that distributed currency and the blockchain facilitation, not just of the currency but of the actual content, and bringing that together in a way that the artist, the creator, the creative is the person who gets paid, and then from that person everybody else gets paid, instead of as it is at the moment where we're at the end of that money chain. I'm not quite sure how we manage to make that happen, but a lot of it will be down to how much we feel empowered to do certain things with our readers. And I think that's why it's ever more important that we are aware of the value of our intellectual property and of our connection, that direct connection that we have with our readers. Nurturing that, growing that, and strengthening that is really important through all these changes, I think, but particularly that one, the money one.
Yeah, and I think why this is so important to talk about is because at heart, our business is we write words in some form on some medium, and we get them to readers in some form, in some medium. So our business is not handwriting or typing words into MS Word or Scrivener and using Amazon or Ingram Spark to publish a physical book. That's not the business model. The business model is not the tools. The tools enable the business model. So if Amazon disappears, if PayPal disappears, we can still run a business because what we do at heart hasn't changed. And that's, I think, so important to remember. But in terms of some of the other, and we're almost there, but there are just a few more things. So some of the AI tools, and I want everyone also now to think about AI. It's more like electricity, as in everything's got AI in now. Like I'm wearing a pair of headphones and they're AI noise cancelling, doing stuff at the same time. We're on Facebook, that's full of AI. Everything, it's in there. It's like electricity now. So everything we talk about is powered with AI, but there are specific tools that we're coming to, like AI narration, Google auto narration, a few of us trying to get into the beta for Google's tool, Pseudo-Write we mentioned, which is writing fiction with an AI tool. Ally had a post about this, some of the other things, Authors AI, Booksby, lots of things where AI is being used to help with creation and also publishing in different formats. But again, as I said, the AI stuff's in everything. Shall I just move on to the spatial web? Because I think we've talked about AI.
Talk about spatial web. Yeah, absolutely. That's really interesting what's happening there. Explain spatial web, first of all.
Yeah, sure. So this is something that, so the idea of the spatial web, and that some people are calling it Web 3.0, which is, this is going into the 3D, three-dimensional space. So at the moment, everything's on flat screens. So this is making it 3D through what people were calling virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, and now they're starting to just call the spatial web. So why this is suddenly sped up is that the rumors are that Apple will be launching their first headset this year to ship out next year. Facebook, I mean, essentially, if you're Mark Zuckerberg and you're looking at being regulated for your existing business model, you're looking at the next business model. And so Facebook are really looking at Oculus. So if Apple and Oculus have these headsets, glasses, and essentially they're looking at going from this device, which, is a flat screen, and most people, I presume, watching this will have some kind of smart device, to something that you're wearing. So Orna's wearing glasses there. I wore glasses for many years. I wear sunglasses. We're used to wearing them. And what it will mean is, instead of me having to have a physical device here to look at, that it will just be in front of my face. And so the effect is the same, but the screen is a lot bigger. So it's moving from handheld to in front of your face. And so for us, what that might mean, I was talking to Orna about it before, it's like, yes, there'll be cool things like I was listening to something saying you could have Lady Gaga in your living room playing concerts, or TV becomes much more 3D, but that's not in our reach, right? That's not what we'll be doing. But what we will be doing is, for example, when I go to a cafe, instead of having to take a laptop and a separate keyboard and all the stuff, what I can do, all the ergonomic things, is I can just type on a table, or I can type wherever. I can use my hands, and the world is a screen. So I know it's very difficult for people to think about, but this is actually going a lot faster than many people expected. And this was also on my radar because my brother, who's a fashion designer, has just got a job with Adidas as a 3D designer. So what we have to think is, we're in entertainment, but we're also in retail. And so he's focusing on 3D retail, which is, if you want to buy some trainers, instead of when you turn things on a screen, on a flat screen, this will be, you put on the glasses and you'll be able to see it pop out from the screen and turn it in 3D. And so if designers are working right now for the 3D retail web, how is that going to change the way we sell books and also how we market? So what I would expect is, within a couple of years, probably you'll be able to put your glasses on and see Orna and I in quite a different way, and that will pop out from the screen or whatever. It will be much cooler. Yeah.
Or much more scary.
Yeah, or much more scary. But the other thing is, they're looking at a new app ecosystem. So again, the companies, the apps, everything we use now, many of us pick up new apps all the time, pick up new tools all the time. And this will be another iteration of new tools, new apps, new things that are coming that will help us. But I think it will be quite a big mind shift. But again, when Apple launched the iPhone in 2007, I said, I don't need one of those. Why would I need one of those? I'm fine with my Nokia just texting people. And then I got an iPod, and then I got an beginning iPhone, and now I use it for everything. I run my business on it. So I don't know, what do you think, Orna, about this idea of the spatial web?
Yeah, I'm interested, but I don't know a lot, and it's that particular one. I'm finding it difficult to see how we'll fit in. So a book at the moment is a digital object, a 3D object only insofar as a little, but what's important in a book is the word. So I'm interested, I need to think about, I think it's in the arena of marketing more than anything else, more than retail. I mean, if you've got a stunning and amazing cover, it could help to sell your cover, because you'll get a sense of it as a 3D object. But I think it's really in the marketing, getting creative about how, just that extra bit of sensory detail will feel to people, and what you can do with that you can't do in 2D. And I need to think about that.
So I've got an example, so I've been postulating for years about the 3D bookstore, which, if instead of having a flat payhip.com/the creative pen, where you see my flat covers, I create a location where you come, and it's my curated bookstore, where you actually can look around you and you see my books next to other books, and it's much more it's more of a curated experience. I think that's what we've got to think. Instead of just a flat site, it's a curated 3D experience. So that's why it's exciting, because I think it's got a lot of potential, far more potential for the direct sales, because that's the environment that we live in real life. Is I went to a bookstore today and I'm surrounded by different categories and all of this. So that's how I think about it.
That's super lovely, because I think a huge number of authors have a dream. Imagine if I could, especially authors who have a big catalogue, you know, imagine if I could have my own books. I would love to, but nobody could ever afford to do that. But now you can.
Exactly.
Or very soon you can. Yeah. And within that space then could happen, if you're somebody who, yes, you've got me going now. If you're somebody who does, you know, if teaching is part of your model or something, then you can have it in there, and you can take your books down off the shelf, and there's all sorts of things you can be doing. Okay, I'm there.
Yes, exactly. So duh, everyone, just think, what do you do in real life, and how do we make it so that it's easier to do? Because flat screen is so fake, really. Anyway, lots of things we could talk about, but we are going to move into the final bit. What we might do is, if these things do emerge towards the end of the year, maybe we'll do something special on the spatial web, because I do think we could both use some time thinking about it and learning a bit more. Okay, and if people are interested, there's a book called The Infinite Retina by Robert Scoble, which I've been reading, which is excellent. Okay, so let's get into how do we stay nimble. So Orna, with all this change, like, oh my goodness, so many things changing, we could, I mean, except the fact that we still write stuff, what do we need to do in order to stay nimble for this future?
Okay, I think we said it already, but it never can be said too often. IP is the center of all of this. So intellectual property, making as much stuff as we can, and we all write at different rates. Some people are very slow, some people are much faster, but the aim is to be productive and to have lots of books in lots of formats, and then to selectively license, you know, if you are licensing to somebody, not to give a full and exclusive license to anybody without really kind of thinking it through. So those two to me would be big, and I think you agree with both of those very, very firmly as well. I mean, we're always saying these.
Yeah, so obviously we're writers, we like writing, that's what we do anyway, and most of us, we don't like some of the other stuff, but so really at heart we still are creating more books, because, you know, if you think about that cool bookstore, you want to have different areas, but the main thing that I'm sort of cautioning about is this clause that is so common in publishing contracts, which is all formats existing now and to be created for the life of copyright. Now, I know people who've signed clauses like that for just a couple of $1,000s, and essentially what that means is you can't do, people say, oh well, my audio rights, I can't do my audio, but that's just the beginning. For example, NFTs, which we really only learned about end of last year, you can't do that either. You can't do a digital special edition, which is basically what an NFT is, because you've signed away the rights. And who knows what else is going to emerge. I'm really thinking about, well, what happens with in the spatial web? Do we just publish an EPUB, or will there be another format? Because all the, you know, a lot of the formats that have been created are created for flat screen devices. So don't sign away all formats existing now and to be created, because we don't know what they might be. Or even, for example, I was joking years ago with Dan Sawyer, who's a big audio guy, about off-world rights, because at the moment you sign world English. But what does that mean? Because, of course, we've got Jeff Bezos going to space in a couple of weeks, and we will have in our lifetime more people doing space tourism. Now, what is off-world rights? Can people have the right to read on their device off-world? And now that we used to laugh about that, but not anymore. So I think that's, you know, what is the space tourism in-flight entertainment option? So these are the things we want you to think about when you're signing licensing. And we are recommending licensing. Absolutely, license your stuff, but selectively license. What else, Orna?
So important, yeah. So the other thing, and it's a sort of a trio, and they go hand in hand, is to nurture that relationship with your reader. That direct relationship with a reader is the one thing that nobody else can do except the author, and that is the magic relationship at the heart of a book. Really, is it's such a quiet and simple act where the two imaginations come together in a book, and to really double down on that, the fact that you are the author and you have, not that your reading or your interpretation of the book is the only one that exists or anything like that, but that you are able to do things with your reader and for your reader that people can't. And we see that readers are really hungry for this authentic sort of relationship with creators in this time, and all the platforms like Patreon and Podium and all of these that are providing this kind of direct relationship. And indeed, you were talking about your direct sales going up. Our direct sales are going up and up. Anybody who's in direct sales is finding that readers are now really quite comfortable with going and buying a book, a digital book, directly from the creator. They like to do it, especially when they know what sort of a difference it makes to you. So really important for you, first of all, to understand that you don't need anybody else. All you need is a transaction, a way of, taking some money in order to sell a book. And when you do that, you start a relationship because you've got an email address, and then it's up to you how you send them that book, what they get along with it, what you surprise and delight them with a year later when they've forgotten all about you. There's so many things you can do when you go direct. So I think that's the other thing that's really, really important. Whatever change happens, that direct relationship, whether it's on a blockchain or, PayPal, or whether you use PayHip or WooCommerce, it doesn't matter. They're all the tools, but the heart and soul of that relationship is the same. The more you can kind of emulate and replicate the heart and soul that went into your book and put that into the relationship, then you're doing something really unique that won't change.
Exactly. And we'll just use those tools to take our relationship onto whatever the next platform is. And then, finally is educating yourself. And as we talked about at the beginning, learning things and keeping your eyes open for opportunities. And when things are ready, then to jump on them. Now, as much as I talk about these things, I don't jump on them as fast as you might think. So I have not done an NFT yet. I do want to do one this year, but I'm waiting to see how the things kind of shake out. But I have been selling direct since 2009. So these are things that we can do. And finally, did want to recommend a book that we're both reading, which is called Undisruptable, A Mindset of Permanent Reinvention by Aidan McCullen, who's Irish, Orna. Don't know if you know that.
Fine Irishman, yes. I heard he was brought up in the Phoenix Park, which is just about the most perfect place you could be brought up in Dublin. Yeah, he mentions that in en route. Yeah.
In the book, yeah. So it's a great book. So it's called Undisruptable, and I'm finding that super useful. Okay, so we are done. We are out of time. We're taking August off. Hopefully everyone is going to enjoy themselves. We'll be back in September talking about something else.
Audio. We are going to
talk about audio.
All about audio in all its shapes and formats, from audiobooks obviously, but also all the things that are happening in audio and podcasting as well. So
all kinds of updates, because so much is happening in audio. We need to do an update on that. So Orna, anything else?
That's it for now, I think. Nothing jumping to mind. Just to say, have a good month, everybody. A good 2 months. And happy writing and happy publishing.
Happy publishing. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.